Greetings, family. Welcome to episode 34 of Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the diversity of Africa and the diversity of studies and research and achievement on the continent and in the diaspora and the world at large. Because what is happening is I've been having debates recently with a few of my brothers um, discussing about Africa, different ancestry of Africans. And in my discussion and my debate with them, I noticed that many of our people and those who are so-called scholars would claim that they are African, claim that they're into African spirituality. But when you dig deeper, you realize that they are pushing the Abrahamic teaching, the Abrahamic doctrine on our people. They start talking about African Edenic language, and Edenic family and all this stuff, which is, problematic to say the least. Because there is no such thing as Eden. Eden is a mythological creation, is a mythical creation. It's not a real place. There was never such thing as an Eden. But they insist. But one of the main thrusts of their argument is to create this impression that we in the diaspora are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that we are the biblical ancient Hebrew Israelite. However, when you press them for evidence, they have none. They cannot provide us with a DNA sample of the original Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because according to archaeological research, according to scientific research, according to the genetic history of humanity, there is no evidence for the existence of an Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is generally accepted that they are mythological creatures or creation, that there are no record to verify their existence. There was no record of a Moses, and so forth, a Noah, a Ham, a Shem, a Japheth. There is no record in the archaeological history of mankind for such figures. But because we have been so indoctrinated into these religious thinking and these religious teachings, we hold them so dear to us that we go beyond faith. Because to believe is one thing, but to go and try to establish as if this actually happened, that we are all descendants from Noah, when we know that that's not how the history of the world went. It's problematic. And you try to ask them for evidence to support this argument. How do we reconcile that with the general chronology of human history? Where in history can we find these people? In literature, in culture, in artifacts? I mean, look at King David. Look at King Solomon. Great and massive kingdom. When they talk about it in the scriptures, in the Bible, a massive kingdom. You mean to tell me, say, not even a wall, not even a stone remain, not even a building, a room, something, that kingdom just disappear off the face of the earth? Come on, people. We have to be a little bit more discerning than this. We have to demand evidence. Then now, I notice another thing as well. In my discussion with a lot of these people, they want to skip over West Africa. They don't want to acknowledge that our direct ancestors are from West Central, and Southern Africa. What they want to do is for us to bypass West Africa because, and let me tell you the reason why they want to bypass West Africa. Because we have been in West Africa in parallel with all the other African nations and people around Africa, in East Africa, in North Africa, we all develop parallel and distinct cultures and unique, distinct history amongst ourselves. You know, even though we are on the same continent and we share a common ancestry, we also have our distinctive experience. And one of the experiences that in West Africa, we were introduced to the Abrahamic faith and the Abrahamic tradition by the Arabs and by the Europeans. And that's a fact. Before the Arab came, none of us in West Africa was talking about Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They imposed those, they inserted those narratives into the mind and the teachings of our people in West Africa. So when you see they're trying to give this impression, that we learned our biblical information from some mysterious ancient text that is false. Some of them would go and try to tell you, oh, the ancient Septuagint is where the ancient writing, the ancient Torah is where so where were these writings in West Africa? Oh, they would assert Ethiopia had the oldest complete Bible. And when we go to Ethiopia, we realize that the Bible was introduced to Ethiopian by a Greek-speaking Lebanese in the 4th century by the name of Frumentius. Bishop Frumentius introduced Christianity into Ethiopia. And that's a reality. The European, the white man, and the Arab, they brought that into Africa and taught the Ethiopians the Christianity that they have and helped them to translate the Bible into their language. That is what happened. So they like to push these false narratives on our people to claim that somehow they didn't learn Judaism, Christianity, and Islam from the Arab or the European during our enslavement by the Arab and the European, during our colonization by the Arabs and the European. That's how we got exposed mainly. That's how we got exposed to these teachings and these ideologies. But they don't want to acknowledge that. So they want to skip over West Africa and talk about East Africa as if that's where we came from. Even though some of our people did come from East Africa, but the bulk of our people, the bulk of our genetic makeup come from East and from West, Central, and Southern Africa. And we never had no exposure to no Septuagint. We didn't have any exposure to no Torah. We never had no exposure to all these ancient manuscripts that they often speak of. And these people who are mentioning ancient manuscripts have never read those ancient manuscripts. They don't even know the language of those ancient manuscripts. And as far as we know, the Septuagint is one of the oldest manuscripts of the biblical script, and that is written in Greek. So you see, the deception that they will try to pull off is just amazing to me. And they go to length to avoid West Africa. Why we don't discuss the achievement of West Africa? Why we don't carry out research and archaeological digs and research into West Africa? And that one of the reasons why there's very little information about West African culture. And this new generation of researchers and scholars and the archaeologists now are digging into the cultures and the history and and the archaeological records of West Central and Southern Africa, and is unfolding the history. Because in the past, most of the research and the funding and the time and effort was focused on Kemet and other parts of East Africa and Ethiopia and so forth like that. So you hear a lot of these people, they're always trying to talk about that region of Africa, but very little is mentioned about the knot culture of West Africa, which have a very ancient culture, which is very vibrant with great achievement. The Benin culture, the Songhay culture, the Dahomey people, and there's many others that we haven't fully explored yet, because West Africa wasn't sexy enough. It wasn't fashionable enough, for a lot of people. But now we have to hold them accountable, hold their feet to the fire. You want to bypass and skip over West Africa and want to just claim all these teachings and religious doctrine from Kemet, from West Africa, from East Africa, from Asia, from Sumer, from Babylon. They want to claim all these body of work. But what about the body of work from where we directly come from? Our authentic root, where we are directly bloodline connected to, which is West, Central, and Southern Africa. Why are we so eager and so driven to bypass West Africa and go to other regions? Now, I love all of Africa. I embrace the entire continent. I share in the achievement of all the continent. I'm proud of the achievement of all nations across Africa. And I'm in solidarity with the struggle against oppression, against colonialism, against imperialism, against capitalist exploitation. I'm in solidarity fully with our African brothers and sisters, across the continent, who are fighting for their independence, fighting for their sovereignty, and fighting for self-determination. Totally, fully. As a matter of fact, not just the continent, but also in the diaspora, also in the world, internationally, wherever African people are, we are fighting for freedom, fighting for liberation, because we have been held back for so long. We've been disconnected from our roots. So we have to fight to reclaim our African identity, reclaim our African personality, and our African sovereignty, which is very important. And that struggle, all African people have to go through that struggle, is going through that struggle, and I'm in complete solidarity with our African brothers and sisters. That has to be clear, but we're not going to use that to give us the license now skip over West Africa and to pretend as if West Africa have nothing to offer, have nothing of greatness to contribute to our learning. You know what I'm saying? We learn a lot from Kemet. Kemet have a lot of philosophical ideas. They have a very high level literary culture, and the truth is, Kemet is the flower of African civilization. It's the apex of African civilization, and by right we should study that civilization and learn as much as we can learn to reinforce what we already have in West Africa, to add to what we have in West Africa, to add to what we have in the diaspora. We can study Ubuntu, we can study Mahat, we can study all of the philosophical systems in Africa and add it to the body of knowledge that we have today and make us greater people. But to use that knowledge now to try to validate the existence of a biblical character and to claim that we are not actually descendants from Africans, we're actually descendants from Arabia, we're descendants from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's where the falsehood comes in, and that's where the trick comes into the place, and that's where the misleading information comes into the picture. And they primarily use the Bible, they use Judaism to justify this, to try to convince African that they are in fact descendants from Babylon, that we walk across the Sahara from Israel, from Jerusalem into Africa and populated and scattered all over Africa. Now, people, remember, keep in mind, the Sahara is so big, America can fit, the United States of America can fit inside the Sahara. So you can imagine walking from New York to California in a scorching desert, millions of people to cross that Sahara to come into Africa, to populate Africa. It never happened. Our people were in West Africa, Central Africa, while our people and other people were still in Suma, still in that region that now they call the Middle East, in the Levant. People were developing parallel. So we're going to abandon the existence of all our people in Africa because of a religious doctrine that told us that we came from these other regions and other places. And then now we ask for genetical markers to identify those original people, and then let's compare our DNA to see if we get a match with the people them in Baghdad, the people them in Suma, the people them in the Levant, to let's see if we match. And the reality is, my brother and sisters, there is no match, because there is no original Hebrew Israelite DNA from the biblical characters. There is none. There is no descendants. There's over 3,000 characters in the Bible. And there's no descendants on the face of this earth that we can go to and get a DNA sample from any of them. So we can compare our DNA today with those people that are descended directly from those people. Not one. And this is the conundrum that we are faced with as a people. And we have to be on guard. We have to use science. We have to use archaeology. We have to use anthropology. And we have to use our brain. Don't let the people then play on our feelings, play on our need for spirituality, play from our need to believe into something greater than ourselves, because many of our people, we believe in higher beings, we believe in supernatural forces, and what they do, they use this, they play on our belief system, that if you don't accept their teaching, that means you don't believe in God. You don't believe in a higher power. You don't believe in the Most High if you don't accept that Abraham is real. That if you don't accept that Isaac and Jacob is real, that means you don't believe. When we know that all these scriptures was written by men, is the pen of men and the imagination of men have written all these scriptures. Every single word was written by men. And men would claim all kind of inspiration. He would claim to be possessed by all kind of supernatural being just to justify what he has written. And unfortunately, many of our people who have lost our culture, lost a lot of our culture, we haven't lost all of our culture, but we have lost a great deal of our culture and our identity, and we have lost our historical records. We now cling on to this as a replacement for our authentic African history and culture, traditions and customs. We have clung to these religious doctrines as a replacement for our actual memory, when our memory are there to recover the authentic memory of who we are. It's in our DNA, it's in the history books. We can go and research. Many of our great scholars have done a lot of work in uncovering our past in West Africa, and the whole enslavement, the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved African is highly documented. Detailed documentation that exists that can aid us and assist us in tracing back our roots to Africa, and especially with the genetic information. That is the kryptonite of all these people. The kryptonite that crippled all their argument. When they say pull out the genetic map, because we have a genetic map that shows the migration of man and people around the world. Just Google it. The genetic migration of man, humanity. It shows you where everyone went and how everyone is interconnected. And that Africa is the birthplace of mankind. Let's not become fooled by these people and their deception. Let's stay focused on rebuilding our African minds. Let's stay focused on rebuilding our African identity and to fight for our sovereignty and our liberation. We must maintain this fight against colonialism, neocolonialism, imperialism. And we must continue to demand reparation for the damage that was done to our people. We need to be rehabilitated as a people. We need to be restored as a people. We need to be compensated as a people. And we need guaranteed that this will never happen to us again. And we also need restitution. Because a lot of things that they have done need to be restored. A lot they have stolen from us. A lot they have ripped out of our soul. A lot they have ripped out of our continent in terms of resources. And not to mention the value that they have taken from the labor of our people for the last 500 years. We have to keep the fight going for reparative justice, Pan-African liberation, reparative justice. We have to keep the fight going in the pursuit of our restoration, of our liberation. That has to be essential to it. But we cannot allow ourselves to become deceived. We must be firmly scientifically literate. We must demand sources. When these people make these arguments about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, demand source, demand archaeological sources from credible scientific journals and institutions. People who are doing the digging, who have been doing it for decades now and cannot find nothing to validate these claims. You must demand sources and demand the introduction of DNA, of genetic information, because that is their kryptonite. And it is also the kryptonite for those who are pretendians, who in America now pretending to be native, who are appropriating other people's cultures and trying to live it and make it their own, appropriating other people's history and abandoning and denying and negating their African history. But it's in their blood. Many of these people, you do a DNA test on them, 80% sub-Saharan African, 70% sub-Saharan African, 1% maybe of half a percent, 1%, 2% maybe of native blood because of the intermixing that took place during the last 500 years of our colonization and enslavement in the Western world. We mix with the native people. And I'm in solidarity with the native people because they've been through a lot. They've been genocide and they've been exploited just like our people. But we are not them. We have a parallel and distinct culture. And we have to respect their culture and they have to respect ours. But we're not going to go into this game of stealing other people's culture and taking other people's culture and pretending to be other people when we are not, because of self-hate, because we're ashamed of being African. We need to get over that and re-embrace our African self. Embrace who we are as an African people. It is essential. So I also want to make this video to say, people, don't be fooled. Don't be tricked by the falsehood, by the false narrative that trying to convince us that we come from the Middle East, that we come from Asia and migrated across the Sahara into Africa. No record for that. No evidence for that. It's all religious indoctrination. Don't fall for it, my people. And I want to thank you once again for listening to Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. This is episode 34. And I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. Hope you will continue to share, continue to like this broadcast and help it to grow so it can get out, so we can have a clear thinking about our history and about our situation. And I'm looking forward to bring you more on these topics and more of these type of content for you, my people. So thank you so much. Ashe, Uncle Mahat, Hotep, what good, my people. My respect every time.